Hey guys, Peshev from Devrex here. Many of you know that I use Quora for sourcing questions for my videos. I write there pretty much daily or at least a few times a week, and I pick some questions that really resonate with me, or I've recently had to deal with that kind of situation or something like that. So for the most part, most of my questions actually revolve around things that, again, I've dealt with recently or I had to deal with multiple times in a row, and so on and so on and so on. So today's question kind of comes from a similar perspective, and it's a little bit more contradictory, but I kind of like it because it's something that matters a lot especially in the IT industry. So a Quora asked the following question: why do some IT companies treat software developers as disposable resources? Where's the value in looking for software developers? So I think that it's a brilliant question because the software development industry is quite interesting. So out of the kind of most professional jobs available out there, software developers are among the most widely distributed in a way that a high-tech company may need tens of thousands of software developers, which creates its own demand. Most of the time when you think about different types of jobs, let's consider some high scale jobs like legal or medicine, or again IT or marketing or advertising or so forth. Like, most companies have, like, out of those most popular professions or like highly valuable that require education and things like that, out of those, most companies do employ a vast number of software engineers. Again, I'm talking about kind of the highest scale. If you think about the lowest scale, like blue collar workers, or just general employers, like people dealing with mining, with crafting, with some things like that, you may have a bunch of those people, and those are usually with a lower paycheck and general types of services like sewing in the clothing industry or the shoes industry and so forth. With all due respect to those people, it's just kind of an observation based on tons of different companies. So when you consider all that, you kind of end up with IT representing a huge part of many organizations, especially, of course, high-tech organizations who need tons and tons of IT, and often see different types of jobs as something that supports the role of IT in the company and not the other way around. So that's something that most companies are kind of dealing with. So that often kind of creates a perception that those companies treat software engineers as disposable resources. And while I can't really say that this is definitely the case, that's also not entirely false either. Why? Well, first of all, due to the first reason we've discussed, right? Like, there are normally tons of different IT people in larger organizations. Well, by IT, I mean especially in high-tech organizations building products, building services, SaaS applications, and so forth. A lot of people building resources. So once you grow past, 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 people, like, essentially you end up in an organization that employs a lot more people in IT, in kind of software engineering. You end up with a product that's well-defined, a product that other people can join and start collaborating on and start working on, and it's a team effort. It's not really kind of one-man show, and so on and so on. So with that in mind, most companies do indeed build their business model around supporting as many kind of software engineers as possible, and thus being a little bit less dependable on those IT people. But more importantly, there's something else, and that other thing is related to the market demand. So it's true that software engineers are among the kind of the job classification that has the least tenure in a job, at least from, again, high specialty jobs. You don't see that many doctors switching hospitals. You don't see that many advertising directors switching ad companies and so forth, as you see software engineers, especially in highly dense areas, just job hopping, switching jobs, starting startups, switching to freelancing, consulting, and so on and so on and so on. It's extremely common, and it's something that a lot of people deal with nowadays. So with that in mind, it's extremely common for people to stay at a job for about a couple years or so on average. Like, some stay just a few months, of course, some stay longer, some keep growing up the hierarchy. They become, senior developers, tech leads, software architects, technical project managers, whatever, up to VP of engineering, to CTO, to something else probably. But that requires commitment, that requires involvement, and there are far too many job opportunities for software developers. And the caveat is the following: according to several researches that I read recently, the peak productivity of an employee is hit somewhere around the end of the third year. So it means that most jobs, especially in, again, the software development industry, they can leverage a software engineer at most after the third year, which means, of course, that the software engineer has to stay with the company for at least 3 years in order to become massively productive. I think that after the second year, it's about 70 or 80%, something like that. But like full-blown max reach productivity is hit at the end of the third year. So if most people leave after, say, a year and a half, 2 years, 2 years and a half, it means that they never even reach their peak productivity. And normally when they reach that peak productivity, that's related with promotions, with more responsibilities by probably appointing to team leads, to some other roles that are more valuable to the company. But most companies actually have to deal with that. Most companies have to deal with the fact that most software engineers are going to stay there for fewer than 2 years, and they're never going to reach full productivity. And that's especially true for junior developers, and that's why almost all companies are actually looking for junior developers with experience, at least a year and a half of 2 years or 2 years, because there's the learning curve is a bit rough. It's really hard to do that. I'm going to explain that probably in my next video. And again, it's until you teach a junior software developer, it's already time for them to go out and join another company with almost double the paycheck just because they had their free training elsewhere, right? And that's pretty tricky for another company. So the reason I'm saying that, job hopping has lots of opportunities for a company, for an employee, and it can lead you places where you couldn't have imagined, or it can give you some other opportunities by upselling your own skills. But in the long term, the more you job hop, and especially the more frequently you job hop, it gets significantly harder to actually get a decent job, because most hiring managers and tech leads are not going to pay that much attention if you've switched 10 jobs over the past 4 years or so, because I actually saw that just probably 3 months ago. So that's a specific type of thing. Like, companies looking for consultants or even with contractors are maybe interested in that because they expect you to leave in 3 to 6 months from now or so. But overall, most companies do want to invest in their talent because the hiring process is too tough. It's long, it's expensive, it involves a lot of people, it requires a lot of shortlisting, yada 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 yada. So companies need to be more or less certain that someone is going to stick for a while in order to hire them, and in order to engage them in the onboarding process and everything else that is about to follow. So yeah, I mean, back to the kind of the original topic, companies don't treat software engineers as disposable. But the thing is that studies show that people become really, really, really effective after 3 years at the job. And most people don't really last for 3 years. So those who usually last for 3 years and more usually get to the point where they become more valuable, more interested, they know more about the company, the projects, the culture, the people, management, everything else, in order to become more valuable of assets to the company. They don't have to, go through all the hassle a junior developer or even a recent hire has to go through. And with that in mind, obviously they have competitive advantage. They become closer to the company. They are being given more responsibility, and overall they become more and more valuable for the organization. So aside from that, the vast majority of other people who simply are ready to leave at any possible moment, people who are just leaving for a higher paycheck, for a better brand name, whatever be it, they are not really as valuable to the company. And once a company goes through 10, 20, 50 hires of that sort, they become careful to those hires, and they become less trustworthy to new people because they want to be sure that they're going to stick for a while. And if they kind of pass the test, if they go through, after the first year, after the second year, and then after the third year, usually more opportunities arise with time. But until then, people just have to kind of prove themselves if they want to stick into an organization and grow in the org chart, as compared to just engaging in job hopping.